y yo me llamo Lida Vázquez. Yo vengo de Lima. ¿Ustedes saben por dónde está Lima? ¿No? ¿Han salido de acá del lugar a Junín, algún lado? ¿No? ¿Nunca? ¿Tienen radio en casa? Sí. ¿Televisión? Sí. ¿Todos?
No tenemos luz.
¿No hay luz en tu casa? No hay. ¿Ustedes tienen idea de lo que es una laptop? Una computadora. ¿Ustedes han usado alguna vez una computadora? ¿No? ¿Nunca? ¿Han visto?
En dibujo.
En dibujo. Ítalo.
¿Dónde está Ítalo?
Ítalo, ponte de pie.
Muy bien.
Ese es tuyo, Ítalo. Está con tu nombre.
Amiga.
Eso es tuyo. ¿Ya?
I would argue to all of you that we are in a new turning point of history for our nation and the world. For the first time in all human history, we have the opportunity to bring people together across the planet in common cause for common good. We live in an age of interdependence, but that can be good or bad. It simply means that we cannot escape each other. Last year, I read a book that described the way the world works in ways better than I can. The title of this book is Non-Zero. The author is Robert Wright. And if you haven't read it, I urge you to get it and read it.
If you look at the progression of human history, there's an experiment involving how broadly can people collaborate. To what extent can different kinds of people separated by great distance get together and solve problems, pursue common interests, without succumbing to the darker side of human nature that might lead the planet to dissolve into chaos.
Gosh, you look at all of human history and you have, a good like 40,000 years of just talking face-to-face interaction. And then you get the first writing, and then just a few thousand years later, in the grand scheme of things, just a few thousand years, right? You get the printing press, and then 500 years you get electronic communication. And then, now it just, gosh, every day there's probably 5 or 6 new applications that are of some significance. At least once a year, or maybe once every other year, we get a big one. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and it changes the way everybody's connecting.
You've got to tell us before we look at this video, what is an internet? Would you mind just sharing that with us for the 4 or 5 people that don't know what an internet is? Would you tell us?
I don't believe we have the time to go into that.
Okay, so this internet thing gets its start from an experiment that was done in 1969 to design something called the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. The internet is defined in different ways by different people. For me, as an engineer, it starts out being a set of standards for communication. That if you observe those standards, if you implement those standards, then all kinds of devices and networks can be made to interwork. So the internet was literally that, a system for connecting between networks, supporting internet transportation of information.
It is now possible, in theory, to communicate with every human being on the planet. One way of thinking about the 21st century world is exactly a world that is ever more connected through the internet. But then if you're disconnected, you are more isolated than ever before.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here and present a $100 laptop that we have invented at MIT and worked jointly with a nonprofit whose job will be to make these and distribute them to developing countries around the world on the basis of 1 laptop per child. And thank you.
One laptop per child is about eliminating poverty by providing primary education to the poorest and most remote kids in the world. And the way we achieve it is by giving them connected laptops, each one that they own, they take home, they use for school, they use it for play, they use it for everything in their life seamlessly. It's a window to the rest of the world.
Esta es la curva del diablo. Esta curva es muy peligrosa. Yo de niño, en primaria, le estudié en una provincia muy lejana donde teníamos que caminar, no había movilidad y ni siquiera una máquina de escribir. No me imaginaba pues que íbamos a conocer esto, ¿no?
Lleva la miel para la amarga vida y el blanco cirio para el pobre muerto.
Como verán, ven, ¿no? Esto es una laptop. Ustedes tienen que cuidarlo, mantener las manitos limpias y mano seca, ¿sí? Yo estoy prendiendo aquí, en este botoncito. Acá la idea es que no solo es trabajar con la estrategia de enseñanza y aprendizaje, sino también es utilizar la estrategia de trabajo en equipo, trabajo colaborativo. Mira, ¿quién está ahí? Ah, ¿eres tú? Escribe la servicio y presiona.
We're at a cusp in history that has to do with how you learn. For the past 200 years, we've assumed that the way you learn is you go to school and that somebody teaches you. And it's the first time that learning can happen without teaching. That sort of cusp happened because of computing, because of the internet, because of interactivity, because of a lot of things. And so you add that to the fact that the world right now is in a situation where as many as 400 million children around the world aren't getting any education. They don't go to school. And so you have to leverage the children. You can't just train more teachers and build schools. You've got to go back and say to yourself, look, can the children be part of this versus just the objects of teaching?
Papi, mira mi nombre. Ve. Está mi foto.
Qué feo, mira, todo chiras, tu pelo está así, así.
Tapen ahí todavía mi foto de Mish.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes, pasa, adelante.
La vida es como un sueño para nosotros que pasa el tiempo volando nomás. Los años rapidito pasan y va creciendo las personas y se acaba el mundo. No hay nada que hacemos. Quiero aprovechar la vida.
Ahorita estamos en Antuyo. No, la vida aquí, como ves, Aquí el campo es un poco triste, ¿no? Como ves, el campo es silencio, no hay mucha siembra. Tanto así en la agricultura, en la ganadería. No hay suficiente dinero para nosotros. Así es, joven May.
Estaba grabando los cigarros. ¿Cómo se siente bien? No puedes entrar así.
Tampoco.
Su cuerpo será flexible, pe. ¿No? ¿Qué? ¿Cómo te puedes? Yo no puedo sentarme así.
¿No puede qué?
Así como está usted.
¿De qué?
Lo que está sentado.
No comprendo.
Así lo que está.
Sí. ¿Qué es la pregunta?
Lo que estás. ¿Cómo estás ahorita?
¿Y ahora? Total.
No, tú lo que estás sentado. ¿Cómo? Así ve.
Sí.
Así lo que sientes. Yo no puedo.
¿Quieres ver?
O sea, ¿cómo te sientes?
Ah, ¿yo?
Sí.
Siento bien.
Ah, eso.
No se me hablará esto, dice.
Yo tenía 14 niños, pero de los 14 niños se han ido 3 a otra institución porque han visto de que han llegado los laptops primero que acá. Dijo, profesor, allá tienen laptops, yo me voy. Estos laptops nos llegaron sin que de repente estábamos preparados. Yo veo que este laptop por niño tiene bastante programas, pero nosotros, como estamos iniciándonos recién, no sabemos cómo llegarlos. Ya para otro día. Chao, chao. Para mejorar la calidad de vida, para desarrollar en el futuro. Eso es para mí la educación muy importante.
Sí, voy. Aquí ya la escuela.
¿Sí?
Aquí la escuela.
Sí, vamos.
Cocinas, sillas, mesas, ollas, sartenes, cucharones, platos.
Este aplasta esto más. ¿Y cómo los puedo pedir? En la estrella. En la estrella, caca. Caca. En el segundo. Haga un clic, ve. Ya está, ya. Acá, mira, un carrito, ve. Acá, ve. Y haga un clic.
Ya contaron.
Mira mi carro.
Ese dibujo.
Mi carro.
Ya.
Coche, ¿cómo te ha corrido? Haz un clic en el carro, ¿verdad? Ya, con una flecha, acá pongo la flecha. En la calle. Ahí. Ah, mira, coche. Sí, ¿la calle?
A ver si lo ves silencio. Déjame haciendo esto.
También hay músicas.
Contra mi música.
No estamos en esa clase. Ya, guarda.
¿Quién le da, profesor?
Ahí nomás déjalo, así nomás. Hay que apagarlo nomás, ¿ya?
No, pues no.
Sí, hay que apagarlo para hacer las clases.
¿Cómo no se apaga?
Ya,
¿Ves?
Se baja su batería.
Se baja.
The idea is quite simple. Let a child learn mathematics by speaking in mathematics about things that really matter to him. So at MIT, we've given computers the power to turn motors, to make sounds, to draw pictures, and we've found ways of giving children the power to control the computer. So that the child can make the computer do anything that he can describe in a suitable mathematical language by typing on a keyboard like this.
The initial ideas came in the late 1960s and early 70s when a man named Seymour Papert made a very simple observation, and that was that children learn differently when they write computer programs because the act of writing a computer program is the closest you can come to thinking about thinking.
What produces involvement, engagement? What grabs the individual? Education has very little to do with explanation. It has to do with engagement, with falling in love with the material.
Seymour Papert was a student of Piaget's back in the late 50s, early 60s, and he got this idea in his head that computation was a thing to think with. The simplest way I know to talk about learning is you learn through doing. So if you want more learning, you want more doing. It's really that simple. What Seymour brought to this was this idea of the children constructing knowledge, not just receiving knowledge. Having the computer be a wonderful vehicle or catalyst or haven for that kind of construction. And then for the next 40 years at MIT, we were exploring the space and doing pilots. With one laptop per child, we said, you know what, enough. We can do pilot after pilot after pilot, but now it's time to actually get these ideas into the world. So one laptop per child is all about how do you take 40 years worth of research around technology and learning and bring it to scale.
The telecommunications was ready, the computers were ready, the internet existed quite widely spread, and the time was right in the beginning of 2005 to build a laptop that was child-centric, affordable, connected, and something that could be read in the sun and was very robust. And that is the evolution.
Well, there have been a couple of waves in human history of globalization. And this is probably the third or fourth wave of globalization. And every time it occurred, people thought the world was becoming one. I think this time it may actually be happening. The ease of international travel, the ease of international communications, and the ease of international commerce are much, much greater than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so we begin now to think really as a global society, which we didn't before.
Almost everyone comes to the conclusion that whatever their time is a critical time in human history. So I'm not sure that I would buy an absolute argument. But I think it's fair to say that we're at a tipping point in terms of people's access to computer-based information, to computer-mediated communication. With about a quarter of the world's population online in one form or another, there is something fairly major happening in our information society, if you like. There are an estimated 1.8 billion people online. There are about 740 million in Asia, 250 million in North America, 450 million in Europe. The numbers get smaller in other parts of the world. The interesting thing is that as we get more and more of the population up on the internet, the avenues for interaction will become much richer. And here I am not capable of predicting what the outcome will be when 6 billion people are online sharing their knowledge with each other. So I don't see this as being a particularly distinct point in human history, but I do see this as an evolution, an unfolding of our ways of communicating with each other.
I think this is a critical time in the history of humanity because for the first time, people are going to be coming together from every corner of the world and be able to engage in direct conversation with each other. I think it's really exciting to think about having amazing new cultural influences and ideas flowing all around the world from different cultures. In the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the rest of the world is going to come online. The next billion people, the next 2 billion people are going to come online. For the first time, we're going to be hearing directly from people we've not heard from before.
¿Qué significa civilización? La gente habla que civilización y yo no entiendo. ¿Qué significa? Aquí la vida es bonita. También es bonito porque hay árboles así y en el sol los árboles se pueden proteger. También muchas moscas. Más las moscas me hacen aburrir. Quiero aprender más de las cosas que yo no puedo.
¿Hay otros sitios que quieres conocer?
Yo quería la sierra, mi abuelo. Yo nunca le he visto a mi abuelo.
Soy carpintero, soy albañil, soy también mecánico, de todo le doy un poco, o sea, para poder sobrevivir. El internet, nos han colocado un internet y nos han dado una batería seca. Ya pasó su periodo de validez de la batería. Si no contamos con el motor, haz de cuenta está como elefante blanco el internet ahí.
Hemos estado aislados, no sabíamos nada que pasa en otros sitios. Ahorita el único es parte un poquito avance, ¿no? Ya los niños algo ya ven qué cosa en otros mundos, en la playa, algunas cositas grabadas, ¿no? Y es el único. No hay otro medio de comunicarnos. Porque es un lugar muy lejos, apartado de la ciudad, ¿no? Por bote, por agua, no hay carretera. Así que de esa manera Purús es un poco aislado del mundo. Si arregla el lente ya pueden, pues los muchachos ya pueden ahí estar investigando algo, ya pues chartearse con sus familias, chartear, ¿no?
Chartear está bien.
Ya, yo estoy hablando mal.
Yo soy nacido en Ayacucho. No estudié por falta de mis padres, no me apoyaron, ¿no? En la sé que mi hijita ya más o menos aprendió, ¿no? Ella me enseña las historias del país, ¿no? De Estados Unidos, de Brasil, de China. Yo quiero que sea un poco, siquiera algo en profesión, que tenga un poco de educación mejor que yo, ¿no?
Ahora sí, van a aprender su laptop y vamos a entrar en la actividad navegar. Allí van a ubicar los de 5º grado, el picaflor, y los de 4º grado, el tucán. Vamos a leer sobre ellos.
La profesora a nosotros nos enseñó solo a apagar y prender. Primero, cuando nos dado la laptop, nosotros queríamos saber todo, pues qué había. Y no intentamos hacer una actividad y a veces salía juegos para leer, música, para grabar todo. Y ahí nos aprendíamos y lo que uno de tus compañeros aprendió una cosa, le tenía que pasar al otro compañero. Y el otro compañero le pasaba al otro compañero y así nosotros aprendíamos todo. De mi interés es más de las leyendas, así de la tierra también hay. Hay también de computadora, ya vas en Wikipedia y se busca. Wikipedia es donde hay todas las informaciones, lo que tú quieres, ahí hay para que tú busques. Y te enteras de cosas que tú nunca has escuchado, nunca has sabido. En Wikipedia te enteras las cosas.
If we project any sort of democratic world, we have to assume that education and learning to think differently, and that means learning to learn how to think, is going to be an essential contribution, maybe the essential contribution to that. The more people are capable of rational, critical thinking, the better the world will be. The more they have access to knowledge about the rest of the world, the better the world will be.
Puma 3, Puma 3, Puma 3. Puma 3, Puma 3, Puma 3. Puma 3, Puma 3, Puma 3.
¿Quién para Puma 3?
Acá Palestina.
Dale, Palestina.
¿Se encuentra el profesor Tony?
Todavía no viene.
¿Qué hora van a cerrar sus oficinas?
A las 4.
Ya quedamos en espera. Ni bien llega, me llama. Vos estás en tu punto esperando.
El problema es que aquí nosotros somos como una comunidad aislada, que no llega nada de... Como a veces la comunicación aquí es difícil, solo hay veces, sabes, por radio, se ve en un internet que sea usable, que no es malo grande. Eso falta aquí.
It's always too tempting to say we're at a critical time, because then the numbers of critical times start to accumulate, and you think you're always at a critical time. But we're certainly at a point when I think a lot of people think that something has gone amiss. We're at a fundamental change in the way we communicate, and it's time to step back and take stock and see where things have gone right and where things maybe haven't gone right. Just because we grew up with the internet, we think that the internet is all grown up, which is not true. The internet is in very early days, but we've had it long enough to be able to say, you know, what about the way we now communicate with each other seems to be enhancing? And what about the way we now communicate with each other seems to be taking things away from us that are nourishing?
Dime, ¿de qué estás sano? ¿No me estás sano? Sí. Sano y resistir.
¿Sí?
Que está amarillo.
Sí.
Está presente un suspiro. Pero nada, cale así. Sí. Ah. Los dos.
Gracias. Azúcar no.
Sí.
No, azúcar.
Sí, vas con normal con azúcar, sí. Más bastante, mucho azúcar.
Sí, gracias. ¿Cuánto tiempo vive acá en el tuyo?
Desde lo que nací, yo tengo ya 46 años. Todos somos acá familias nomás casi. Graciela, ven. ¿Me vas a ayudar a sacar del cuello su cabeza? ¿Está bien lo que hemos matado?
¿Sí? Soy la primera persona de los Estados Unidos que...
Sí, la primera. Porque nada venían acá, nadie. Y tampoco nunca hemos conversado, hemos dialogado tampoco. Claro, siempre pasaban, de allá de otro pueblo venían así, pasaban, mirábamos a los gringos. Decíamos, saludábamos, ellos también decían así. Y nunca hemos conversado.
¿Usted tiene preguntas para mí de mi país?
Sí.
¿Cómo? ¿Qué?
No, yo te preguntaría, yo te pregunto, igual es lo que acá se vive con tu país, lo que vivimos, lo que comemos, ¿es igual?
Sunshine, our temperature 44 degrees, relative humidity at 82%, winds out of the west southwest at 5 to 10. Again, it's 44, going up to high of 52 later today. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Ian DeVore on New York's weather station 1010 Wind. Here's what you need to know about the bridges and tunnels. Still very crowded both ways. Queensboro Bridge, Midtown Tunnel slow to Manhattan, and the Williamsburg Bridge jammed to Manhattan downside as well. 15 minutes on the outbound Holland tunnel, about 5 to 10 at the
The second subway project is not hazardous to your health. That's according to an air quality study.
Using a cell phone while driving in any form should be banned. That was the unanimous recommendation today of the National Transportation Safety Board.
Every place on the planet is associated with a latitude and longitude, which also means that like every person has a latitude and longitude assigned to them at a given moment. Every experience, or every story, or every little nugget of information you've discovered about a place has a latitude and longitude. People generally use Foursquare to check into places, and there are parks and restaurants and libraries and museums and bars. And when people check into places, we use that to, broadcast your location. Hey, I'm here. If anyone's around, come and find me. And then from there, it allows people to, figure out well, what's next? Is there something interesting nearby that I should know about? It's let's build things that leverage all the interesting stuff that's going on with social media to help people, put the screens away and go out and actually discover things that they haven't discovered before.
What's really the heart of how the internet is going to change everything in the future is how things in the real world change because people are connected. And so Meetup is a simple idea, which is how do people self-organize a local gathering about anything, anywhere. I think the most powerful and interesting form of how community is going to take shape in the coming years is how people who have a common interest, common passion, common need, they have a common diagnosis, whatever it is, that now that they can connect and they can connect locally more easily, you're going to have communities emerge. And there's no such thing, I think, as a real sustainable community unless people are seeing each other face to face.
A community, it's interesting. I try not to let my students use the word community in class because it's such an evocative and descriptive word that it actually allows people who mean two very different things to pretend that they're talking about the same thing. So a community, if you look find some dictionary definition, there's about a dozen different definitions of community, all the way down to kind of Grover's Corner style, little town, USA, where everybody knows everybody, all the way up to the community of French speakers. Very different. The breakdown of traditional community happened in the past. It is indeed the case that a machine with a screen was partly responsible for eroding community, but it wasn't a machine with a keyboard, right? The rise of television, coupled with suburbanization and a bunch of other factors, correlates really strongly with the decay in social capital. One of the things I think it falls to our generation to do is to figure out how to get that back in a modern context. We plainly never go back to white picket fences and small town life. But we have things like Meetup, we have things like Foursquare, whose existence is predicated on using these tools to coordinate real world meetings, not to replace them. We know we're missing something in this community. If we can use these tools to get some of that back, we will.
Buenos días, gringuito.
Buenos días, señora.
I think what we normally think of as community is more like the feeling of community, a feeling of being connected. And that's really what we need in today's world, because we're far beyond the time in which you could sort of say, this is a community and you can have defined boundaries to it and all the people in this location are a community. We live in this network society which has fuzzier boundaries, if you can even talk about boundaries. So what we need is a feeling of community that would allow us to feel a sense of connection to people around us. That community connection has to extend beyond just connecting you to people like you. There's really no room for growth of empathy when you only connect to people like you. Empathy grows when you connect with somebody totally different from you and experience a sense of shared vulnerability and love for that person.
¿Y ahora cuándo va a ser? Lunes, dice, ¿no?
Sí, lunes.
Vas a despedirte acá de los amigos, que de verdad que te vas. No te vas a ir calladito, pe.
Para mí lo que tú vienes aquí, con lo que ya has llegado y con tu manera de nosotros conversar, todo para mí es una alegría bastante. Y el día que tú te regreses de aquí vas a tener un recuerdo quizás de nosotros. No nos olvides, pues. Siempre tengas recuerdo de nosotros.
Well, there they are. Our new electronic media, or our new gadgets. You push a button, and the world's yours. You know how they talk about the world getting smaller? Well, it's thanks to these that it is. Everywhere is now our own neighborhood. But not only is the world getting smaller, it's becoming more available and more familiar to our minds and to our emotions. The world is now a global village. A global village. With me now is Marshall McLuhan. These new media of ours have made our world into a single unit. The world is now like a continually sounding tribal drum, where everybody gets the message all the time. A princess gets married in England, and boom, boom, boom go the drums. We all hear about it. Why, Marshall, do you use the word tribal? Well, I think you'll find everything we observed tonight about the media points in the direction of tribal man and away from individual man. Involuntarily, we're getting rid of individualism. We're in a process of making a tribe. We are no longer so concerned with self-definition, with finding our own individual way. We're more concerned with what the group knows, of feeling as it does, of acting with it, not apart from it.
The history of civilization in 7 words is more people pooling resources in new ways. And what the internet does is it allows many, many more people to pool many more kinds of resources in a wild variety of new ways. Because we can get dynamic information about the resources you've got access to and the resources I've got access to, we can actually share them better than we used to be able to. The techies got there first, as so often happens, right? Linus Torvalds pops up in 1991, says he wants to build an operating system. Linus was the first person to realize he could use the entire world as his talent pool. And that, the opportunity to, in an instant, reach into that and get hold of the collective imagination, the collective wisdom, the collective knowledge, that kind of weaving together of things is moving from, you know, we can build an encyclopedia, we can build an operating system, right? The famous, but famously virtual examples, it's moving into the real world. The interweaving of mobile phones and the internet, the fact that they're no longer separate networks, but they're really now genuinely tied together, means that we have, for the first time in human history, the majority of adults on the planet are part of a single connected grid. There's a generation of people who simply think we can accomplish things our elders didn't because we have tools and networks and agreements among ourselves to act, behave in a different way.
Because of things like Facebook and Twitter, and even the software that came before them, that there's millions of people, hundreds of millions of people that are trained to use this type of software now. So all the stars kind of align and allow you to do things that we've never been able to do before.
أربعة من المصريين ولعوا في نفسهم قالوا يمكن يحصل زي اللي حصل في تونس. أنا بس بصور لكم فيديو عشان أقول لكم رسالة واحدة. عايزين ننزل يوم 25. انزل البيت، ابعت مسجات لأصحابك، اكتب على النت في كل حتة.
A large part of what is emerging out of the Arab Spring is a new generation who has grown up with the technology and the possibilities that the technology creates in a world that is radically different from their parents. What is clear is that what's really driving these revolutions is not technology. What's driving these revolutions is the desire of millions of people for change. What's facilitating it is the ease of the technology and the speed of the technology. What a Facebook page does is at one glance, you realize, oh my God, there's 70,000 people or 700,000 people who feel the same way I do. So maybe together we can do something. That's again why it is a turning point in human history. This generation starts from connection, starts from the assumption that you are inextricably connected to others. And that changes the way we think about what is possible.
The ability of the human race to innovate, to surprise each other with things that are both unexpected and practical, things that can change the world for the better, is going to be increased because we can get more ideas from more people crossing more wires in more ways. We've got bigger problems, but we've also got a bigger network of potential solvers of those problems. And I'm hopeful that we can use that network to get those people tuned into each other and thinking on all of our behalves.
Buenas tardes, ante todo. ¿No? Acá tenemos la presencia del especialista Gardel.
Estamos tratando de activar ya lo que es el sistema
de internet acá en la institución educativa es para todos los niveles que hay acá en la comunidad, vale decir para los estudiantes, docentes y padres de familia. Estamos teniendo algunos inconvenientes con el inversor. El inversor que hemos encontrado ahí está, bueno, está con fallas, está mal logrado en todo caso.
Esto.
Ahora tenemos un motor ahí que vamos a trabajar a partir de las 5 para ver la forma de conectarnos a internet y eso ya va a ser un gran avance también acá en la comunidad.
Si es que no hay solución, ¿qué podríamos hacer o qué pudieras hacer en este caso?
Sí, amigo, vamos a dar solución de todas maneras a eso.
Si es que nada de solución, no te vas todavía.
No está enganchando acá la señal, pues, porque se va y viene y se va, pues. No digas que no.
¿Cómo está?
¿Qué tal? Queremos que nos preste su teléfono para hacer una llamada.
Pero no hay el público, ¿verdad?
Sí, pero muy rápido nos gasta la tarjeta.
Bien caro, pero 10 reales el minuto cuesta.
Sí, y si no queremos también algo tranquilo para poder comunicarme con el Ministerio de Educación. Tenemos un problema con el satélite acá en Palestina. Hola, Bari. Gardel. Hola, Bari. Sí, estamos... Sí, ¿me escuchas? Estamos acá en Santa Rosa para hacer la llamada. Tenemos un problema con el satélite. Sí, la señal del Direway se va, cada 3 minutos se apaga. Las baterías también están ok, pero está fallando lo que es el inversor. Acá tenemos un teléfono que de repente nos podías llamar por la noche. 9, estamos acá entonces esperando tu llamada, Bari. Hola, buenas noches. Hola. ¿Ya? Ok, Bari. Ok. Ya, Bari, ¿eh? Gracias, muchas gracias. Buenas noches.
¿Qué dicen?
Ellos han hecho todo el monitoreo y todo está ok allá. Puede ser, dice, que el generador esté...
No está.
Sí, pues sí, eso porque...
No está, porque estamos usando el generador en todas las cosas.
Sí, eso dijo él y está viajando ahorita y ha sido muy amable de conectarse porque está viajando a Piura nuevamente ahorita.
¿Por qué no llamas de noche?
Está ocupado. Ajá.
Bueno, entonces corta.
Lo más importante que anhelamos todos es una carretera, pues. Una laptop, pues, sí, pues, en mi punto de vista, es justamente como una anestesia que les están dando a los niños ahí, que ahí nomás se entretengan. Pero si hubiera una carretera, saldrían, pues, a Iñapari, Cusco, todos, a ver otro mundo, otra realidad. Porque aquí no hay los muchachos que despejen su mente, que se pongan a ver y piensan algo más a lo grande, ¿no? Porque yo me imagino mirando algo grande, un niño, un estudiante dice, voy a estudiar y voy a ser como ese señor, como él es ingeniero, yo le voy a superar a ser ingeniero. Pero si no sale de este vaso de agua, nosotros le llamamos al Purús una cárcel, ya, si no salimos, no vamos a ver qué cosa hay más allá.
If this were
1845, you would be making a movie about the telegraph, and you would be so excited about this. First of all, the signals on the telegraph go as fast as the speed of light in a wire. Now, do you know how much faster that is than a horse running or a train going? You'd be saying, wow, we won't have wars anymore because people can communicate instantaneously with each other. Now, we all know that subsequently there were major world wars that have happened and all kinds of other terrible things, despite the fact that we have increasing amounts of communication and connectivity. So there is no guarantee that just because you can communicate that you will agree. And the consequence of that is sometimes tension, disagreement, and conflict. Technology does not solve all problems. In fact, it creates some. The internet is now an avenue for harm as well as good. Disappointing as that is, it's also a manifestation of human nature.
Está bueno. Brasileiros o inglés. Inglés. ¿Entiendes esta música?
Mi cultura es de Mastanaba, ¿no? Ahorita ya no hacemos nuestra danza, ¿no? Con nuestra típica, pero no olvidamos nuestra cultura, ¿no?
Connectedness does risk erasing difference, in that the very exchange of ideas and flow of cultures can overwhelm cultural differences that have taken millennia to develop, and again, that are the diversity that makes the world so interesting.
There's a trend toward homogeneity in societies. And as you go around the world, cities are beginning to look like each other. You're finding the same stores and the same restaurants and the same products. And people are doing more of the same kinds of things wherever you go in the world. The world is becoming more similar. It's not very popular to question why we're holding on to these things, but we have to question it, because sometimes you do that in a very paternalistic way where you say, well, that culture is something we shouldn't disturb because their identity is so strong, and the fact that they're poor and they're not learning and they don't have medicine, it's better to leave it alone. The world is changing. The numbers of languages are reducing, and there will be a time where we will be one race speaking one language. Maybe that'll take 1,000 years, maybe it'll take 5,000 years, maybe it'll take 500 years. I don't know what it's going to take, but that's where we're headed.
The story of human history has been the extinction of indigenous traditions. The capacity to preserve the elements of the tradition is richer than it's been. There's no need for any language that exists now to recede from human memory ever again. We can capture them digitally. But there is the fact that time and again, when indigenous people have been faced with the modern world, they find parts of it attractive. The story of humanity is a story of cultural traditions disappearing by human choice. by people abandoning those traditions.
¿Hasta cuándo te vas a quedar ahora, gringuito?
Todavía no sé, justo llegué hoy día.
¿Y tu esposa?
No tengo.
¿No tiene?
No, no tengo.
Ay, ya. Búscate de acá una, pero hay varias solteritas. Te presento. ¿O eres pistaco, gringo?
¿De qué?
Pistaco.
¿Qué hacen ellos?
Matan gente de su brazo, se llevan su cabeza, hacen caldo. ¿Así no eres?
No, no soy.
Ay, ya.
Sacan los laptops, niñitos, sacan los laptops. Cuando fui el año pasado a la UGEL, había ciertas escuelas que no había recibido, pero estaban programadas para la capacitación. Y este año ojalá que nos llevan a capacitar cómo es la forma de manejo. Bueno, he visto de que los niños actualmente son más hábiles, les gusta descubrir. Yo de eso es lo que yo temía, ¿no? De que lo valoro, se cruza, ya no vale. En cambio los niños, por más que dices no, metían la mano este que el otro, entonces venían con una novedad cada mañana. Profesor, no, esto es para esto, me decía. Están mis niños aprendiendo y que están en este mundo de la innovación, de la tecnología, ellos están creciendo con eso.
I no longer can speak for one laptop per child. I can only speak for myself. Our goal was to give every child an opportunity to learn. And we had a means to that goal, which was a connected laptop that every child would have running great software for learning. So we built a laptop and we started getting it out into the world. We're not there yet. It's going to take time, and it's going to take time for the teachers to become comfortable with this, and it's going to take time for the curricula goals to evolve so that they make room for this. And even though there are deficiencies, the vector's pointing in the right direction.
Aunque mal me pagues, corazón santiaguero, y con producciones musicales quinoa solamente para ti. Te he querido, te he amado, ¿cómo he de negarte? Te he querido, te he amado, ¿cómo he de negarte? Te he amado, te he querido. A ver, voy a probar. Yo también voy a probar. Eres parte de mi vida, santiaguero amoroso. Ahora sí. Ahora sí. Así. Así. Así quieres. Sí, me entrego en tus brazos.
¡Vamos, Michael!
¿Y usted cómo sienta sobre yo quedando en su casa?
Yo me siento alegre, Michael. Muy alegre. Con tu presencia estoy alegre. Me has hecho acostumbrar. Parece que siento que tú eres una familia más en mi casa. ¿Y usted te sientes tranquilo, Michael? ¿Cómo te sientes usted en mi casa?
Tranquilo, bien, cómodo, como familia.
Ah, yo también, pues, como una familia más, usted está, Michael, en mi casa. Ojalá que no te olvides nomás yéndote a tu país.
No, nunca.
Muchas veces me ha dicho que voy a olvidar sobre ustedes. ¿Por qué cree eso?
No, eso yo, mira, si una vez que tú regresas a tu país ya va a ser un poco difícil porque puedes volver aquí a Huancayo. Pues no es difícil, pues yo cuando ya te vas ya nos vas a olvidar. Pues siempre me llamas Michael para seguir conversando. Porque a veces a mi familia prácticamente se han acostumbrado bastante con otras personas. A veces cuando uno se va ya uno extraña. Ya me he extrañado, ya la casa va a quedar un poco silencio ya cuando se van. Por eso lo que decía, no, ya no nos olvides, Michael, cuando vas.
What is a friend?
What is a friend?
What is a friend? Where do you come up with these questions?
As a friend, well, a friend is...
La palabra amigo.
Used to be somebody you knew really well.
A friend on Facebook or a friend in reality.
It is funny that I feel like I have made friends virtually with people I've never met.
Amigo, contas de todo. Como un hermano.
Well, a friend is first of all very rare.
What we used to call a friend is now what we would call a really good friend. Somebody you actually kind of know.
Lo que usted y yo somos como amigos, será para la palabra amigo.
Aristotle was the first. I'm an academic, so I'm required to take really simple questions and answer them on absurdly grandiose historical canvas. But Aristotle, he's one of the only philosophers ever to take on the concept of friendship as a salient human characteristic. And in his telling, someone that you had such a deep association with that you shaped their life and they shaped yours, without other gain, without also being in business together, without also being romantically attached. It goes from that to a friend is someone where I click the button on Facebook that says, will you friend this person? In that process, the word friend has become damaged because it now stretches to cover really all kinds of connections. Does the number of casual friends, right, on the long tail of sort of Facebook connectivity, does that actually reduce the number and depth of our closest friends?
I remember growing up with a multi-party telephone line and no television. I'm not nostalgic necessarily for any of that, and the reason is that I feel that I am far more connected with a larger group of people now than I ever could have been in the past.
Hello.
The tools that are available to me to maintain friendships, to maintain family relationships are infinitely more varied and richer than anything I had available in the pre-internet age.
Hello, Isaac.
That's Michael. That's Michael. He sees what he sees. That's what he sees when he looks at his screen.
Well, I don't pine for the past at all. I'm very happy to watch this internet evolve and become an even better tool for me to stay connected with the rest of the population.
You know, sometimes when I kind of think I have my iPhone with me and then realize I don't, and I need to check my email or want to check my email, the moment when I realize I don't have it, there's like a thing in my gut, like this feeling of loss, You're like emotionally attached to the device itself.
I think it's going to get a lot worse. I think you're going to see like mainstream uses of people just on their phones all the time. And the things that they're disappearing to aren't things that make their real world experience any better, they're distractions.
As these technologies pile up, there's a way in which you can see a future in which things are even more radically different. I think there's a certain way in which these connections are becoming easier to make, and it'll be even easier in the future. As these connections become more automatic, then, what happens to our sense of real connection?
Currently, 68% of the world's population cannot get online. That's about 5 billion people. In 2011, a special rapporteur for the Human Rights Council of the United Nations released a report. In it, he detailed that access to the internet is a vital part of any society, and every state should make it a priority to ensure all their people are connected to the internet. My vision and my dream is to ensure every person has access to the internet as a basic human right. Many people think that the internet is the bits, wires, and protocols that make it work. It's your wireless router in your living room. It's your cell phone in your pocket. But that's not what the internet is to me. The internet is this digital civilization that lives on top of our brick and mortar civilization that we live in.
La parte de energía todavía está bien. Ahora, la parte de la antena que vemos mañana.
Mi esperanza es eso, que ellos aprendan más. De Mastanao ya, ellos ya sabes que ven por internet, por todo, pues esa es mi esperanza.
For the first time, it is theoretically possible to communicate with every human being on Earth and to allow them to communicate with each other and to connect them to the people and to the knowledge that they need to make something of their own lives.
Yo no sé tanto de internet, pero personas que conocen, bueno, de la internet tiene sus contras y tiene cosas buenas, ¿no? También depende uno disciplinarse, ¿no? Si los que manejan la internet quieren viciarse en cosas malas, tampoco no es bueno, ¿no? Pero hay buenas cosas, noticias para conocer, muchas cosas en la internet, ¿no? 13, 14. Depende de disciplinarse, ¿no?
14, 13, 14, 13, 14.
Mira, ya entré en mi correo, Benjamín.
¿Quién entra?
Pero no hay nada. No, pues no tengo nada en agregado. No tengo nada.
¿La agrega?
Qué bueno, yo tengo correo. Qué bueno está. Dice poco es malo, grande. Ah, sí se carga. Dice poco está malo, grande. Está cargando. Está cargando ahí mi esa ruedita. Basta. Bang, Lidia. Basta ya. Eso que escribe pam, tam, banda. Ahí está bien. Ahí está bien, mira. Ahí está banda. Yo te bien, ya cayó. Oye, la rana. Tu huevo está. La rana es tu huevo. La rana es tu huevo. Está bien, huevo.
There are a lot of things that happen as a result of having the internet that are basically just silly, right? You know, kittens on treadmills on YouTube, right? It amuses you for lunch hour. But it's not exactly the stuff that civic revolutions are made of. And then when you look back in history at the printing press, you see that the stuff we take for granted now took decades, in some cases centuries, to actually come into being, right? The printing press gets set up, first thing we get, erotic novels, right? Somebody's like, hey, I know. Scientific journals took another 150 years to get going. when you look at things like Ushahidi, the crisis mapping service that sort of takes what a whole population knows about a crisis and turns it into a map you could see and work with. Or you look at Patients Like Me, which is trying to transform medicine by making the patients much more active participants. You see that we have a chance here to take these tools and their incredible flexibility and their distracting amounts of freedom to create bits of self-amusement and not much more. Or we have the opportunity to really figure out ways that we can use these tools to make society better off.
Aquí para mi hermana, póngase.
Mamá te manda saludos, un beso grande para ti. Estudia para que saques buenas notas. Y chao, hijita, te amo mucho. Es mi mensaje.
People think the internet is just a tool for communication. It's how we get in touch with one another. It does that, but it does so much more. And it has impacts in basically every facet of life.
Aquí primero, cuando que se entra en internet, te vas aquí en esta bolita, en esta bolita. Puedes navegar, ahí te va a salir ese. Y tú puedes poner Google. Todo lo que tú quieres vas a buscar en Google.
The internet is a tool for innovation. All of the world's knowledge is cataloged, categorized, one Google search away. In education, you can now go online and go to Harvard and watch Harvard lectures, MIT lectures. With telehealth and telemedicine, villagers can talk to doctors via Skype. In disaster relief, we're seeing how communications is reinventing how lives are saved. We've watched how, in the Middle East, the internet gave people a voice that they never had before. And not only were the people in the Middle East rallying for change, the rest of the world rallied with them. People's ability to communicate shouldn't be limited by imagined cultural boundaries. Every person that we connect to the internet becomes a co-creator in our future. They get to be part of what happens next on planet Earth.
Yo soy de la ciudad de Nueva York. Eso es una ciudad muy lejos de acá. Quiero presentar a ustedes a mi ciudad.
For me, one of the most exciting things about the internet is this ability to recognize the humanness of people, the reality of people in other cultures, in other languages. So I think we've really barely scratched the surface of what is possible through collaboration. If you think about it, doing an encyclopedia is one of the easiest things.
Y ahora yo quiero saber más información sobre tu pueblo, Palestina, Perú. ¿No hay? Entonces, lo que tenemos que hacer hoy día es tenemos que escribir una página de Palestina, Perú.
¿Cuándo hemos entrado a este lugar? En 1989.
I see collaboration, especially computer-mediated collaboration, as an extremely enabling tool for the population of the world. And I hope what it will do is uncover voices and ideas that might be invisible otherwise.
De acá es lo que yo he hecho, ¿di? No, lo que han tomado, ¿di? Mira, el bote de la iglesia. Palestina, Perú es un pueblo ubicado en la provincia de Purús, en el departamento de Ucayali, en el Perú.
When we or our grandchildren look back and see what we made of the internet when we were the first people to shape its place in society, the question they're going to ask is, did they use it to change the world for the better?
The greatest hope of this technology is that human beings would be connected to each other globally in ways that allowed us to realize our common humanity. That's the vision that really imagines that we could erase so much conflict that comes from seeing ourselves one way and others another way.
anything that enriches our knowledge of the range of human traditions, I think, enriches our understanding of ourselves. The broader our database of human experience, the more clear we can be on kind of what are the universals of being human, how broad is the menu from which we can choose, and to what extent maybe has the menu shrunk by virtue of modern technology. You know, what have we lost? We know what we've gained with email and telephones and whatever else is characteristic of modernization, but what have we lost?
We've left behind a way of life. I don't know that that's good or bad, but it is. The way we live is different. And as the information revolution continues, we may find that it has very fundamentally changed the nature of global society and what it is to be human.
Throughout all of history, we have moved from isolation to interdependence to cooperation. That's what's going on here now. People all over the world are trying to figure out how to hold on to their religious, their ethnic, their racial, their tribal characteristics that make them proud and give them identity without having to denigrate, dehumanize somebody who's different. I believe the great mission of the 21st century world is to build up the positive forces of interdependence and beat back the negative ones, to move from mere interdependence to a global community.
Bueno, yo tengo una pregunta para ti. ¿Qué significa amigo?
And there's whole, worlds of civilizations there that we don't really hear from all that often. Should we wait for that ringing to stop? It's my phone. That's brilliant. Sorry.
Bien rico es. Sí. Nunca no he comido mojero. Primera vez. Primera vez.
Llorarán gotas de sangre salai al sentirte abandonada salai.
Este sapo tiene que salir bien venenoso. Ese es venenoso.
Anda afuera.
¿Y ahora? ¿No? ¿Y ahora?